It's time for the clash, and thousands of households are set to face a huge council tax hike as local authorities target second home owners. Councils are due to make millions and claim that the money raised will be used to fund local services and house building. Another tax has been put in place to deter the purchase of a second home, a move to attempt to stop displacing local communities, particularly in holiday destinations. But is it fair?
I mean, it's a really good policy. Yes, it is fair, actually. It's really good to tax second homes because the utility of a home is a place for people to live in, fundamentally. And engaging in taxation, which disincentivizes people from owning more houses than they need, that other people do need, because, again, the demand for housing is inelastic. You can't not live somewhere, otherwise you're homeless. There is no utility in having somebody have an empty holiday home that they use 6 weeks in a year, which could be used to house a homeless person.
Yeah, really, to penalise someone for actually being able to afford a second home. Either, Captain, I'm coming to you first.
Yeah, yes, if people want to have a second home for some reason, that's all fine. But everyone has to pay council tax, and that's something that you have to make sure happens, because what has happened in the last few years, the council tax has constantly been reduced by governments, and that has meant that services that local authorities of all sorts, not particularly political sorts, but they can't actually do everything they need to do. And if you've got maybe a big authority, then it makes it that much more difficult, because you're probably doing education and you know, some element of health as well, and you're trying to make it work for your people, and that's just not happening on a way.
It's interesting because Labour have kind of said that they're not going to be doing a bunch of large-scale council tax reform.
I'm literally a communist.
And so the fact that there's a former Labour defence minister out here saying, no, we need to increase council tax, we need to increase central government funding for councils for house building. But the reason for this policy isn't a revenue-raising policy for councils that will raise some revenue. It's a disincentive for people to buy more houses than they need. Like, by incentivising people to be able to own one house by having that be cheaper for that house owner than if somebody was using it as a second house, that's a disincentive for people to essentially be greedy with the number of houses that they own. But again, I guess greed is good for a lot of these people, like GB News, because they say, oh, it's punishing people who can afford the houses. No, it's punishing people for using their money to take a house away from a homeless person who could be living in it.
And we need to re-look at that whole issue of where people should be able to get.
But people are charged council tax on a second home anyway. I mean, you are.
Yeah.
But usually it's a bit of a discounted rate if it's got furniture, and then you pay. But if it's before, if it was empty, you could get away with not paying anything. But the rules have completely changed.
Well, this is penalising them. It's twice the council tax. They have to pay double the council tax.
Yeah.
It used to be half the council tax if you had a second home. Now it's double. And I have some sympathy, obviously, with your view that people should pay their council tax if you own a property. But what this is symptomatic of, well, it's symptomatic of two things. One, the breakdown of local councils across the country, unable to afford to discharge their obligations, and there's a whole host of reasons for that, including net zero right at the heart of it.
What's net zero have to do with anything? What on earth does net zero have to do with council budgets being slashed 40% in 14 years? What the hell are you talking about, Ben? Net zero is Ben's IQ? True, Jim speak. What the hell is he on? What is he smoking? Some councils are going bust because they're having to do net zero? And what's crazy as well is that Reform UK bang on about net zero being terrible the whole time. The people who voted for them at the election don't care. It was one of their lowest concerns, like 4% or something of Reform UK voters said they voted for them over climate change policy. Because actually, dealing with the climate crisis is really high on most people's agendas in this country. We're a very pro-green policy country, so they're only shooting themselves in the foot by having it that is their weird, crank bugbear policy. Councils are cash-strapped because they had central government funding cuts, 40% over 14 years. Yeah, Reform UK, the populist party defending property barons, true.
But also, it attests to the utter failure of the United Kingdom to keep up with the number of homes that are required to be built in this country, and the appropriate homes for the people who need them, which is also partly to do with the unbridled immigration that we've experienced, particularly in the last 5 years, but over the last 27, sorry, forgive me. You know, we've had far too much immigration. We've had more people come to this country in the last 25 years than in all of history before that.
But building homes is going to be a really interesting but difficult area, because what's going to happen is someone's going to say, we need 1,000 homes here, and then every
We do need the homes, and we also do need the immigrants. We have an aging population, Ben. Having more working age people come into this country will help pay your pension, right? You need a pension, it'll get paid for you by people who are increasing the productive capacity of the economy by coming here as a working age person. That's a useful and good thing. Of course, we will need to build the houses to be able to house them. But the people who also want to have the pensions paid through that taxation also want their house price to continue going up, so don't want the supply of housing to increase, especially not in their area where the immigrants might live. It's a real kind of catch-22 for these people, because they've not realised that, the immigrants are the ones paying your pensions, mate. If you get rid of them, you're going to have worse standard of living, unless you sell your house to pay for social care.
Everyone who lives there is going to say, not here, not here. And it's that NIMBYism that actually drives this not happening.
Which, of course, was shown by at least, I think, 12 or 13 members of the Cabinet, the Labour Cabinet themselves, who showed a high level of NIMBYism themselves. Now, Rachel Reeves said that she's a YIMBY now, yes, in my backyard.
Yeah.
But I think the Labour policy is disastrous, if you don't mind me saying so. They're going to take Greenbelt, they're going to turn it to be...
Greenbelt.
They're going to take stuff that is currently termed Greenbelt.
It's not
They're going to call it Greybelt. They're going to redefine Greybelt.
But there are areas.
Yeah, but can I just finish?
Ivor Kaplan is about to say that there are plenty of areas on the Greenbelt that are just actually brownfield sites. They're technically part of the Greenbelt, but the actual quality of the land is terrible. It's not actually like high areas of natural wildlife that are being paved over here. They're crappy areas that are run down, and we could build housing on them. And he's right. He's 100% right. Yeah, dead belt. It's not green anymore.
But it's disastrous because they're going to build absolute monstrosities, cheap build, produced to the lowest possible standard, but completely disproportionately insulated in order to meet net zero. One of the biggest problems with new build...
What? Insulation is good, it drives down bills. And second of all, Ben, you are a Thatcherite. You are a free market fetishist. You love the free market, and yet here you are going, well, Labour are going to deregulate. They're going to build absolute monstrosities. It's going to be really cheap quality housing. And I'm like, yeah, because the private sector are doing them. You like the private sector, the people who always have the worst houses. Persimmon, Barratt Homes, Taylor Wimpey. Everybody tells you that to not buy a new build because the new builds are all terrible because the private sector has built them all. Because there's no reason for them to build good houses because, they have a monopoly on the market. And if you strip away more regulations, that red tape that free marketeers so often get mad about, all that's going to do is decrease the incentive for the private developers to build good quality housing. Like, you wanted this. This is your kind of policy. This is your ideological base. The free market people. Maybe, Ben, the free market is bad if there's no incentive for these private sector developers to build good quality housing. If they're going to build monstrosities, are you perhaps suggesting that we should do housing communism and get the state to build council houses? Because they're good quality. They're good quality houses. They're much better than you get from Taylor Wimpey. Or are you saying that because they're being forced to pay for insulation on the houses, that means they're going to cut corners elsewhere, so that's why net zero is giving us bad quality houses? What the hell is he trying to say here? They were all downing tools to try and get the water nitrates environmental standard scrapped too. Exactly. Like, you want deregulation. That's your ideology. Unless you really want to put extra red tape in, by all means do so.
Now is mould because of the regulations for net zero. But the other thing...
What mould for regulations for net zero? What the hell is he talking about? Again, they keep banging on about net zero as if some people are going to get one over. No, people are not paying attention. Yeah, the market never understands utility. 100%, Jack, especially not in one with an inelastic demand like housing where everybody needs a house, so you'll take one regardless of the quality. No one's choosing homelessness over a poor quality persimmon new build or whatever it is. That's not happening because of the inelastic nature of the demand of the market. But of course, again, the market has one defining motivator, which is profit. The market only works in terms of how much profit they can or can't make. If they can make profit off a terrible house that serves no social utility because people have nowhere else to live, they will do it because that's the market mechanism. This is your ideology crumbling, Ben. The market hasn't solved this issue and has solved it in the worst way possible, because not only is it dealing environmental damage, it's also bad for the people who live in them. And also means we'll have to spend more on cyclical consumption when these crappy Persimmon builds have been demolished and rebuilt by Barratt in the same terrible style, because they know they want to be able to get the contract again. And also bad because they'll look nasty too. Again, you're asking for there to be more regulations on this sector. You're wanting more red tape to ensure that the homes aren't horrible. And I want the state to build them. I want the state to build nice homes.
That really gets me down is the hollowing out of town centres right across the United Kingdom, where you've got a restrictive planning regime, where offices above shops should be converted to residential ahead of ripping up our green belt, but they aren't because of the regulation.
So what you do is you do want regulations then. You're saying it's bad that we're getting rid of regulations for building on the green belt, but you want regulations in terms of how we build in city centres? What the hell are you saying? Are regulations good or not?
Regulations in place.
Onto the second home.
Okay.
Double money.
It's not green belt.
It's grey belt.
It is grey. And
No, but that's a new term.
It is.
But it's not what you might regard as green belt. And what we all regard as green
How
belt
do you know
is
what he regards as green belt?
well, I regard green belt as those places that are full of, Hampstead and all those sort of areas. What we're talking about is areas where there is a reason to, car parks which happen to be for some reason set aside as part of a green belt.
But what's
The thing is, he's also super NIMBY here as well, essentially saying, why should the poors have new houses to live in? Of course, they should be council houses built by the state or high quality rather than crappy new builds by a private developer in the no justice fictional universe. Right? But what he's saying essentially is, well, the poors don't deserve that. We should ship them off into converted office space above shops, which is already shown to also be terrible to live in. Like, lots of times they just don't have enough light coming into these places if they're converted office blocks. I mean, there's an argument to say, right, that you could rewild these areas of grey belt. If they're part of the green belt but they're not actually green, we could rewild them to maintain the green belt but also have the areas that aren't particularly green be nicer, to actually be under the remit that the Town Country Planning Act gave them at the start. But Ben Habib's arguments against this are just completely incoherent. Are the regulations bad? There are good regulations. What do we want to build more or build fewer? Like, do you want to convert things or build new ones? He's all over the place.
So those sort of things could be used.
Again, just shows you that loads of people who claim to be pro-free market aren't pro-free market at all. They're pro-free market for the things that they can exploit, and they're anti-free market, and they love regulation when it's used to protect their existing assets. I will always have respect for actual ideological free marketeers, because at least I understand why they think what they think. I disagree with them, but at least they have principles that they stick to. Thatcherites like Ben Habib, the neoliberal types, they will pick and choose when they will believe in free markets. And funnily enough, they love free markets when it comes to the labour market, in terms of how much that they can ensure that the rentiers, like your property magnate Ben Habib, can make off their existing inventory at the expense of actual hard-working people. But new builds that might disrupt the value of his property portfolio, no, we can't do that. They'll be too ugly. They'll disturb the green belt. It's so blatantly self-serving, so blatantly self-interested. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for memberships. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.